They whispered behind designer handbags when I walked my daughter to Westbrook Academy's pristine gates, their manicured fingers pointing at my thrift store coat and worn sneakers. The administration questioned my financial statements, the PTA mothers excluded me from their charity committees, and teachers gave my brilliant daughter half the attention she deserved. Little did they know that the quiet man picking up our daughter every Tuesday was worth more than their entire neighborhood combined, and that I had deliberately chosen to live simply while he secretly funded half the scholarships at their precious institution. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I never imagined that walking my 8-year-old daughter through the ornate iron gates of Westbrook Academy would feel like stepping into a battlefield. I'm Sarah, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the greatest victories come from the battles others never see you fighting. 3 months earlier, I had been living what most would consider a perfect life in Seattle. My husband Marcus and I had built something beautiful together over the past decade, though most people would never guess the extent of what we'd created. Marcus preferred the shadows, the quiet satisfaction of success without the spotlight. While his tech empire generated billions in revenue, he drove a modest sedan and wore jeans with small holes that I'd mended countless times, much to my loving frustration. "Sarah, we could buy a mansion in every major city," he'd laugh when I'd tease him about his attachment to his college sweaters. "But would that make Lily happier? Would that make us better parents?" This was Marcus, the man who had revolutionized cloud computing infrastructure, but still got excited about finding a good deal at the farmer's market. Our daughter Lily was exceptional in ways that had nothing to do with our financial situation. At 8, she was reading at a high school level, solving complex math problems that made my head spin, and creating art that captured emotions most adults struggled to express. When her public school teacher pulled me aside to discuss gifted programs, my heart swelled with pride and concern simultaneously. "Lily needs more challenge," Mrs. Henderson explained, her kind eyes reflecting genuine care for my daughter's development. "She is completing worksheets in minutes that should take the class 30 minutes. She's started bringing books from home because she's finished all the reading assignments for the quarter. Have you considered specialized programs?" That evening, Marcus and I discussed our options while Lily worked on what she called her invention journal at the kitchen table, sketching designs for a robot that could help elderly people with daily tasks. The juxtaposition wasn't lost on me, our daughter dreaming of helping others while we debated whether to reveal our resources to secure her the education she deserved. "I could make some calls," Marcus offered quietly, his fingers drumming against his coffee mug in that familiar pattern that appeared whenever he was processing complex problems. "There are programs, schools, that specialize in gifted education. Money wouldn't be an object." I watched Lily explaining her robot's features to her stuffed elephant, her eyes bright with the kind of passion that couldn't be taught, only nurtured. "But what about keeping our privacy? What about the life we've built for her, where she's valued for who she is, not what we have?" This question had haunted our marriage since Marcus's company went public 5 years earlier. We'd watched friends change when money entered the equation, seen how wealth could isolate children from authentic relationships. Marcus had grown up modestly, the son of a postal worker and a school secretary. His success hadn't changed his values, but it had certainly complicated our social dynamics. "What if I apply as a single parent?" I suggested, the idea forming as I spoke. "I could use my maiden name, my old teaching credentials. Lily could get the education she needs, and we could maintain our privacy." Marcus's expression shifted through several emotions, concern and understanding warring in his dark eyes. "Sarah, that's a huge burden for you to carry alone. Parent-teacher conferences, school events, fundraisers. You'd be navigating that world without backup." "I taught for 6 years before Lily was born," I reminded him, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "I understand school environments, educational politics. And Lily's worth any sacrifice." What I didn't anticipate was how drastically different private school culture would be from the public schools where I'd taught. Westbrook Academy wasn't just an educational institution. It was a social ecosystem where your child's intelligence mattered less than your family's pedigree, where parent volunteers were ranked by their husband's net worth, and where fitting in required a wardrobe that cost more than most people's annual salaries. The application process alone should have prepared me for what was coming. While other families submitted portfolios filled with professional photographs and achievements that read like corporate resumes, I provided what I thought mattered: Lily's artwork, her test scores, samples of her creative writing, and recommendations from teachers who genuinely knew her capabilities. During our interview, Lily charmed the admissions committee with her genuine curiosity and thoughtful questions about their science lab and library resources. She asked about their community service programs and whether students could propose their own research projects. I felt proud watching her represent herself so authentically. Dr. Harrison, the head of admissions, seemed impressed, despite his initial skepticism about our modest presentation. "Lily clearly has exceptional academic potential," he acknowledged, though his eyes lingered on my simple dress and my daughter's practical school shoes. "Our program is quite rigorous, and family support is essential for student success." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I'm committed to supporting Lily's education in every way possible," I assured him, meaning every word. What I couldn't say was that Marcus and I had already researched every aspect of their program, that we'd quietly funded similar initiatives at other schools, that educational excellence was a shared passion that had originally brought us together. When Lily's acceptance letter arrived 6 weeks later, it came with a partial scholarship, a detail that would later fuel assumptions about our financial situation. The scholarship was merit-based, but the amount suggested need that didn't actually exist. I felt grateful for their recognition of Lily's abilities, while simultaneously worried about the implications. "They're giving me money to be smart," Lily announced excitedly, not understanding the complex social dynamics she was about to enter. "Can we celebrate with ice cream?" Quote. As we drove to her favorite ice cream shop, I caught Marcus's concerned expression in the rearview mirror. He'd been quiet since the acceptance letter arrived, and I knew he was wrestling with the same worries that kept me awake at night. Were we setting our daughter up for social challenges? Was academic excellence worth potential isolation? "She'll thrive," I said firmly, as much to convince myself as to reassure him. "Lily has something those other kids don't have. She has genuine curiosity, empathy, and parents who love her unconditionally. That foundation will carry her through any social politics." Marcus reached over to squeeze my hand, while Lily chattered about her excitement for advanced science classes and the school's robotics club. "And she has the strongest mother I know advocating for her," he added quietly. "But promise me something, Sarah. If this becomes too difficult, if the social pressure becomes harmful to either of you, we reassess immediately." I nodded, watching Lily's reflection in the window as she planned her first-day outfit and wondered about her future classmates. I had no idea that within weeks, I'd be questioning everything about our decision, that my simple wardrobe and honest responses would mark me as an outsider in ways I'd never experienced, and that protecting our family's privacy would require strength I didn't know I possessed. The morning of Lily's first day arrived with September sunshine and my daughter's infectious enthusiasm. She'd chosen her favorite dress, a simple blue cotton one that brought out her eyes, and carefully packed her new supplies in the backpack we'd selected together. As we walked toward Westbrook Academy's imposing brick facade, I noticed other families arriving in luxury vehicles, mothers wearing outfits that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, children dressed like miniature adults heading to board meetings. "Mama, look how big the library windows are," Lily whispered, her eyes wide with wonder rather than intimidation. "I bet they have so many books." Her excitement reminded me why we'd made this choice. This wasn't about social acceptance or fitting into someone else's definition of success. This was about giving our brilliant daughter access to resources that would challenge and inspire her. As we approached the entrance, I straightened my shoulders and prepared to navigate this new world with the same determination that had carried me through teaching in underfunded public schools, through the early years of Marcus's startup when we lived on rice and beans, through every challenge that had strengthened our family's bond. Little did I know that the real test was just beginning, and that the assumptions people would make about my thrift store clothes and practical approach to parenting would reveal more about their character than mine. The whispers started before we even reached the front door. The whispers started subtly, like morning fog creeping across a harbor. I first noticed them during the parent orientation meeting, held in Westbrook Academy's mahogany-paneled library, where first-edition classics lined walls that seemed designed to intimidate rather than inspire. As parents gathered in small clusters, discussing summer vacations to the Hamptons and upcoming charity galas, I found myself standing alone near the children's literature section, inadvertently eavesdropping on conversations that would shape my understanding of this new world. "Did you see the scholarship families?" A woman in a Chanel suit whispered to her companion, both of them stealing glances in my direction. "I heard they're letting in more this year. It changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it?" Her friend, sporting a tennis bracelet that probably cost more than most cars, nodded sympathetically. The PTA fundraising becomes so awkward when you have families who simply can't contribute meaningfully. It puts everyone in an uncomfortable position. I pretended to examine a book about marine biology while processing their words. These women didn't know me, my background, or my family's circumstances. Yet they'd already categorized me based on my appearance and assumptions about the scholarship notation in the school directory. What struck me wasn't anger, but rather a profound sadness for their children, who were learning by example that a person's worth could be measured by their accessories and zip code. Dr. Margaret Pemberton, Westbrook's headmistress, called the meeting to order with the kind of commanding presence that suggested decades of managing both brilliant children and their often less brilliant parents. As she outlined the school's mission and expectations, I found myself genuinely impressed by their academic standards and commitment to developing critical thinking skills. This was why we'd chosen Westbrook for Lily, this dedication to intellectual growth that transcended traditional classroom boundaries. "Our students don't just memorize facts," Dr. Pemberton explained, her eyes scanning the assembled parents with the intensity of someone who'd seen too many promising children dimmed by parental pressure. "They learn to question, to innovate, to see connections between disparate concepts. We're preparing them not just for college admission, but for lives of meaningful contribution to society." After the presentation, parents naturally clustered around the refreshment table, introducing themselves and establishing social hierarchies with the efficiency of experienced diplomats. I approached a small group discussing the upcoming science fair, hoping to learn more about opportunities for Lily's interests in robotics and environmental science. "I'm Sarah," I offered with a warm smile, extending my hand to a woman whose perfectly highlighted hair didn't show a single strand out of place despite the humid evening. "My daughter Lily is starting 3rd grade. She's particularly excited about your STEM programs." The woman, who introduced herself as Patricia Wellington, shook my hand briefly before her eyes performed the unconscious inventory I was beginning to recognize. Her gaze traveled from my simple cardigan to my practical flats, lingering on my wedding ring, a modest band that Marcus had chosen with love rather than ostentation during our graduate school days. "How wonderful," Patricia replied, though her tone suggested anything but enthusiasm. "Lily must be quite bright to earn admission. The academic standards here are remarkably high. Does your husband work in education as well?" The question seemed innocent enough, but I sensed the subtle probing that would become a constant theme in my interactions with other parents. Rather than explain Marcus's actual profession, which would have required revealing details we preferred to keep private, I opted for a version of the truth that protected our family's anonymity. "He's in technology," I replied simply, which was accurate if incomplete. "He often travels for work, so I handle most of the school-related activities." Quote. This explanation seemed to satisfy Patricia's curiosity while reinforcing her apparent assumptions about our economic status. A tech worker who traveled frequently suggested someone in sales or support rather than an executive, certainly not someone who owned the company. Her expression shifted to what I would learn to recognize as polite tolerance, the kind reserved for families who were present, but not particularly relevant to the social ecosystem. "That must be challenging," she said with practiced sympathy, "managing everything on your own while he's away. We're fortunate that Richard's schedule allows him to be very involved in school activities. He's actually chairing the capital campaign this year." Before I could respond, another mother joined our conversation, introduced as Jennifer Ashford, whose family apparently had a wing of the art museum named after them. The conversation quickly shifted to topics that excluded me by design: private clubs where I wasn't a member, vacation destinations that cost more than most annual salaries, and upcoming social events that required both invitation and wardrobe investments I had no interest in making. I excused myself politely and moved toward a display showcasing student artwork, where I found genuine solace in the creativity and imagination represented on the walls. These children, regardless of their family backgrounds, were producing work that spoke to universal themes of wonder, curiosity, and hope. A painting by a 2nd grader depicting her grandmother's garden reminded me why education mattered, why we'd chosen this path despite the social complexities. "Beautiful work, isn't it?" a warm voice beside me observed. I turned to find Dr. Rebecca Martinez, whom I recognized from the faculty introductions as the head of the art department. Her genuine smile and approachable demeanor stood in stark contrast to the social gymnastics I'd been navigating all evening. "Absolutely," I replied, feeling genuinely relaxed for the first time all evening. There's something so honest about children's art. They create from pure inspiration rather than expectation. Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly what we try to preserve here. Too often, parents push children toward what they think will look impressive on applications, rather than nurturing authentic interests. It's refreshing to meet a parent who understands the difference. Quote, "We spent the next 20 minutes discussing child development, the importance of process over product in creative endeavors, and the ways that artistic expression could enhance learning across all subjects." Dr. Martinez had taught at both public and private schools, and her insights into the unique challenges faced by scholarship families were both validating and encouraging. "The transition can be difficult," she acknowledged as the evening wound down, "but the children who thrive here are those whose families prioritize learning over status. Your daughter is fortunate to have a mother who understands that distinction." Driving home that evening, I reflected on the complex social landscape Lily and I would be navigating together. The academic opportunities at Westbrook were everything we'd hoped for, and more, but the cultural expectations and social hierarchies were more entrenched than I'd anticipated. As I pulled into our modest driveway, passing neighbors who waved from their front porches without judgment or assessment, I felt grateful for the grounding that our real life provided. Marcus was waiting in the kitchen with chamomile tea and homemade cookies, a tradition from our early marriage that had survived every change and challenge we'd faced together. As I described the evening's interactions, he listened with the careful attention that had made me fall in love with him during graduate school, when we'd spent hours discussing everything from quantum physics to social justice over instant coffee and shared dreams. "Are you having second thoughts?" he asked quietly, his fingers intertwined with mine across our worn wooden table. "Because we can explore other options. Public magnet schools, homeschooling, moving to a different district. Lily's education is important, but not at the cost of your happiness or her sense of self-worth." I considered his question seriously, weighing the social challenges against the academic opportunities, the judgment against the resources that could unlock Lily's potential. "No," I said finally, surprised by the strength in my own voice. "This is bigger than their assumptions or social politics. Lily deserves access to excellence, and I refuse to let anyone make us feel unworthy of that access." What I didn't anticipate was how quickly those assumptions would translate into real consequences, for both Lily and me. The first week of school proceeded smoothly enough from an academic standpoint. Lily came home each day bubbling with excitement about her new teachers, the library's extensive collection, and the science lab where she'd been allowed to examine specimens under a real microscope. "Mama, did you know that butterfly wings aren't actually colored?" she announced one afternoon, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. "The colors come from the way light bounces off tiny structures. It's like nature's own special effects." Her joy was infectious, reminding me daily why we'd made this choice. But alongside her academic excitement came increasingly frequent questions about social dynamics that broke my heart with their innocence and insight. "Why don't the other kids want to be my lab partner?" she asked one Thursday evening as we worked on homework together. "I know all the answers, and I'm really good at following instructions. Tommy said his mom told him to work with kids from good families, but I thought we were a good family." The question hit me like a physical blow, not because I couldn't answer it, but because I could answer it all too clearly. At 8 years old, my daughter was experiencing the kind of social exclusion that had nothing to do with her character, intelligence, or kindness, and everything to do with assumptions adults were making about our family's socioeconomic status. "We are a good family," I assured her, pulling her onto my lap in the rocking chair where I'd comforted her through nightmares and celebrated her achievements since she was a baby. "Sometimes people make mistakes about what good means. They think it's about having expensive things or living in big houses. But you and I know that being good is about being kind, honest, and caring about others." Lily considered this explanation with the seriousness she applied to complex math problems. "So Tommy's mom is confused about what makes families good?" "Tommy's mom probably loves him very much and wants to protect him," I replied carefully, not wanting to vilify the other parents while still validating Lily's experience. "But sometimes when people try to protect their children, they make choices based on fear instead of understanding. It doesn't mean you're not wonderful exactly as you are." That weekend, I decided to attend the PTA welcome coffee, determined to build connections that might ease Lily's social transition. I chose my outfit carefully, borrowing a blazer from my sister and wearing the one pair of expensive shoes I owned, a gift from Marcus for our anniversary that I'd been saving for special occasions. The coffee was held at Patricia Wellington's home, a sprawling colonial that showcased wealth with the subtlety of a museum exhibit. Original artwork adorned walls painted in colors that probably required consultation with feng shui experts, and flower arrangements that cost more than most families spent on groceries created conversation areas designed for exclusive rather than inclusive interactions. I arrived with homemade brownies, a contribution that seemed modest compared to the professionally catered refreshments but felt authentic to who I was. Several mothers complimented the brownies, though I noticed they carefully inquired about whether I had made them from scratch with a tone that suggested homemade might be either charmingly quaint or embarrassingly inadequate. The conversation naturally centered around upcoming fundraising events, particularly the annual auction that funded classroom technology and enrichment programs. As mothers discussed donation solicitation strategies and corporate sponsorship opportunities, I realized how thoroughly my assumed financial limitations excluded me from meaningful participation in school activities. "Sarah, you're so quiet," Jennifer Ashford observed during a lull in conversation. "Do you have thoughts about the auction? Any connections in the business community who might contribute?" The question felt like a test, one where every answer would either reveal our true circumstances or reinforce their assumptions about our limitations. I opted for honesty within the constraints of our privacy needs. "I'd love to help with planning and coordination," I offered. "I have experience with event management from my teaching days, and I'm happy to volunteer time even if I can't contribute major donations." The response was polite but telling. Several women exchanged glances that suggested my offer of time rather than money-marked me as someone whose participation would be appreciated but not particularly valued. The conversation quickly moved to discussions of silent auction items donated by family businesses and vacation homes, topics where my contribution would be irrelevant. Walking home from the coffee, I felt the weight of invisible barriers that no amount of intelligence, kindness, or dedication could overcome. These women had decided who I was based on external markers, and no demonstration of character or capability would change their fundamental assessment of my family's place in their hierarchy. That evening, as Marcus listened to my account of the afternoon, I saw anger flash in his eyes for the first time since we'd begun this journey. "This is exactly why I hate the visibility that comes with wealth," he said, pacing our kitchen with uncharacteristic agitation. "Those women would treat you completely differently if they knew about the company, about our investments, about the fact that we could buy and sell most of their families 10 times over. But knowing that would change everything, including how they treat Lily, and not necessarily for the better." His frustration was valid, but also missed the deeper point that was crystallizing in my mind as I navigated these interactions. "It's not about them treating us differently if they knew our finances," I realized aloud. "It's about the fundamental unfairness of a system, where children's social acceptance depends on their parents' bank accounts rather than their own character. Lily shouldn't need our wealth to be valued. She should be valued for who she is." This realization would sustain me through the increasingly difficult weeks ahead, as assumptions about our family translated into real consequences that affected not just social dynamics but educational opportunities. Because the truth was, our story was just beginning, and the real tests of strength, dignity, and principle were still to come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.